Hey folks, welcome to the Triple T Thursday. For those just joining us, that's tools, tips, and talk, where we'll discuss info for the knife maker. In today's episode, we're going to do number 2 in our compression lock series. We're going to be doing the lock mechanism and the detent. Let's go make it happen.
So just to recap from where we were last week, we've got it all set up with the stop pins. The bearings are in there. It glides really nicely. It collides a bit back here, but it's not very tight right now. Next thing is to do the bolsters. I got a piece of 416 stainless we're going to be using, so we're going to cut it and CA glue it to either side and then drill through, and then we'll flush it all up and set the screws. Okay, I'm ready to glue these, and just one thing to note, I always oversize the bolsters before I put them on, and it may look odd, but I'm actually going to glue them in place this way. I understand that's the inside, but the reason I do that is because there's bearings here, this is so thin right in the inside of the pivot that if you do it like this, when you go to drill this, you won't be able to spot this. But if you just glue it here, there's enough that you'll be able to spot this drill. So that's why I'm going to do it, and then I'm just going to flip them over when I actually put them on, and that's why I have lots of room on the outside.
Here I'm just going in with a 3/16 drill just to spot a hole. Then I'm going to go back with a number 17 and then use a reamer to get it exactly 3/16. For the other side, I'm actually going to be drilling it with a 1/4 inch because it's got a hidden pivot.
Now it's time to trim up the front of the bolsters here so they're exactly the same on both sides. When you flip the knife over, the bolsters are exactly the same. So what I'm going to do is first just measure between these holes, which is exactly where I want the bolster should be. I want the bolster to go from about here to here. We got our bolsters drilled and shaped, and we've done the fronts. Now we're going to tap all of the holes that I've marked in red. Okay, so that's with a 256 tap. And the ones I marked in black, those need to be countersunk for the heads of the bolts. Alright, the bolsters are all attached. I missed the footage because I forgot to turn the camera on of doing the counterbores. But this counterbore from TI Connector is great. It's exactly the size for these. I think it's 150 thousandths wide, and it's got a pilot for a number 44 hole, so it's perfect for these screws. It makes it really easy. It is expensive. I think these are about $105 for this counterbore. But now the knife, as you can see, it flies open. It just glides on the bearings. So now, next step, we're going to do the lock.
I want to mention our sponsor, Maritime Knife Supply. Soon they're going to be having a folding knife parts section, so you definitely want to stay tuned for that. Also, if you need steel, abrasives, tooling, anything, handle material, you name it, Maritime Knife Supply has it. Go check them out.
So here's a better look with the lock bar outlined. What we're going to do is go to the mill and cut from here to here to here with an 1/16 of an inch end mill I'd use a smaller one if I had one, but that's the smallest one I happen to have. And we're just going to cut this section. This line, this one, and this line will do with the abrasive discs that I normally use. Alright, so here's the lock liner with the lock ground. It moves really well. So now the tricky part of bending just this part. I don't want to bend this. So I'm going to figure out how to do that, because you really want to bend it from this point. So got to think about how I'm going to do that. So here's the lockup. You can hear it click. It locks up well. The only issue is there's a little bit of lock rock. You guys can hear that? And that's because what I didn't take into account, with the length of this lock, this whole lock mechanism is flexing up and down just a little bit. I'll zoom in on this so you guys can see it. So I think cutting this top lock area here was probably not a good idea. This is so thin that it's allowing this whole thing to flex up and down. If this wasn't cut, I think it would probably be a little better. It would also make the lock tighter, which might have been a problem. It definitely still works, but I don't like the movement in the blade here. You can hear it rattle. Alright folks, so I did some more work on this. You can see I redid this liner. And now there's no lock rock whatsoever. But I don't think I actually needed to redo the liner. Let me explain. So here's a diagram of the lock. This would be the blade, and here's the lock mechanism. So the lock rock was actually occurring because this line, this face that it locks up against, was actually straight across. So what was happening is you could feel this face hit this lock point. What I needed to do is actually angle this. And normally I would do this on my liner locks, and it would be angled this way, so the back point would hit the back face. And I did try that, and it was worse. I ended up having to do a very, very slight angle this way. And I'm accentuating this, but it's probably 1 degree or something like that. So it actually locks up right here. Okay, now there's no lock rock, and it just works perfectly now. I think this was the issue. Because the spring is gonna move up and down slightly. You just don't want to feel that, and that's what was happening. It was kind of rocking back and forth on this face. So I'm happy that I figured it out, because I didn't want to do another knife in Damascus and have the same issue. But now it's rock solid.
The last thing we're going to do in this episode is the detent. So here I'm drilling a number 54 hole through both the liner and the blade. And then I'll take the liner off, and I'm going to go through just the blade with a number 53, and that will set the detent ball. And now I'm just using a nail set to put that 1/16 inch ceramic ball into that number 54 hole. And we want it to protrude about 15 thousandths, maybe a little less.
Alright folks, there is the lock and the detent. I also installed the thumb stud to open it. It's rock solid now, and you can flip it closed. And the detent, I'll show you guys, the detent just snaps it in place, and works well. I love the flip close, which is very cool. All right, folks, that's it for today's episode. Join me next week when we'll add the scales. We're actually going to replace these bolsters with some titanium, and we're going to do a special process to darken all the titanium. All right, thanks for watching, folks. See you on the next one.